Sterling Marlin won his first race 30 years ago, and as much as the historic nature of his victory remains in memory banks, anyone who attended the 1994 Daytona 500 likely first remembers the sound. The Morgan McClure car didn't just appear to go faster, it sounded like it came from another planet with its high-pitched whine. A wheeze of sorts, not typical of a stock car approaching 200 miles an hour. Teams eventually figured out the legal exhaust mechanism installed in Marlin's car, but not until he went back-to-back Daytona 500s to enhance his status as a fave in the garage, as well as a name etched in NASCAR history.
Can you believe you're here?
No, not really. Let's face myself.
You kids might know some of Sterling Marlin's most notable moments, but maybe not the roots of his story. Learning on the job from the time he changed tires and worked as a crew chief while a teenager for his father, Cuckoo. Those days wrenching on cars started his path to Daytona's victory lane and later to a pivotal role in Dodge's return to the sport until an injury cut short a potential championship-winning season.
Sterling had a serious wisdom about how to do things, especially when it came to speedway racing and stuff like that. And, you know, something that it takes to build a team is a lot of fun and a lot of humor, and that's one thing that Sterling Marlin has. He's always a lot of fun to be around.
Sterling Marlin grew up about 30 minutes from Nashville Fairgrounds Speedway, the track where he would make his first Cup start at age 19 in 1976. He had only raced a couple of times in his life, but his dad had broken his shoulder in a crash, and the team needed someone to drive, so why not Sterling? An oil pump issue ended his debut early, but Sterling would get an occasional Cup ride while also starring at his local track, winning Nashville Fairgrounds championships in 1980, 1981, and 1982. More than 6 years after his Cup debut, Marlin earned his first chance to run a full Cup season in 1983, and then didn't run another full Cup schedule until 1987. It would take 279 starts before Marlin would win a Cup race. What kept him around so long before ever winning? His status as a race car driver never went to Marlin's head, mainly because he genuinely enjoyed life as an easygoing tobacco farmer from Tennessee before, during, and after his driving career. He even at one point dropped the G from his first name since everyone pronounced it Sterling. And then the legend goes his mother got involved and the G returned. People knew he had the talent as he worked on his dad's cars. People loved having him around and his joking persona as the prankster in him appeared at just the right time. They knew on the track, in the right situation, with the right brake, he would thrive.
You know, Sterling's a legitimate short track racer, right? He was raised, you know, his dad, Cuckoo, he brought experience you can't get in school, you just don't get it overnight. You know, he brought generations of experience in being around NASCAR.
That break came in the form of team owner Larry McClure when he needed a driver for the 1994 season. Crew chief Tony Glover told me that when he had to find a replacement for Ernie Irvan, he didn't consider drivers who had won races. He wanted Sterling Marlin. As a runner-up in 9 races, Marlin finished second just too many times not to have it in him to win. Those finishes came at a variety of tracks, NASCAR's biggest tracks, Daytona and Talladega, short tracks at Phoenix and Bristol and Martinsville, as well as a 1.5-mile staple at Charlotte Motor Speedway. Oh, and maybe here's something you did not know about Sterling Marlin and Tony Glover. They shared a common love for University of Tennessee football. Hey, it never hurts to have a little connection outside the car when trying to land a job. Glover had confidence Sterling could win with a fast car, and when Marlin showed up and drove that number 4 car at Daytona, everyone knew he would have a chance to win because, man, that car met the definition of fast.
Runt Pittman, their engine builder, had found a few things, and they equated to more horsepower on the super speedways at those really high, sustained, flat-out RPMs. One of the things he'd found was a different way of routing the exhaust header pipes and combining them. The car had a completely different sound than anything else on the racetrack. And they were very guarded about letting anybody near it, lest they discover the secret sauce and adapt it for themselves. So I think it was one of the 500s where even going into the race on Sunday, there was one car, that had a clear-cut advantage on the field.
The exhaust created 2, maybe 3, or possibly even 5 extra horsepower. Drivers from that race remember the sound, and I caught up with one of them, Rusty Wallace, recently at the NASCAR Hall of Fame.
Those engine builders they had at that team were so good, and Sterling was on top of his game. He's always been a hell of a driver, a really good driver, when he's at his prime. But, we all jumped on his lead with that exhaust system you just mentioned. Those things came by, sounded like a bumblebee. They had those crossfire headers, they called it, on those cars, and it seemed like it gave them a little bit more power in certain areas, but they took well advantage of it, and they were really good at those speedways.
Marlin's first 2 victories came in back-to-back Daytona 500s in 1994 and 1995. And then he won at Darlington later in the 1995 season. On that day at Darlington, on one of the toughest tracks on the circuit, Marlin crossed the finish line ahead of one of the toughest drivers, Dale Earnhardt. What made Marlin so good at Darlington? Here's something you wouldn't know without seeing it in person. Glover told me that Marlin would always outrace the competition when running on old tires and low grip. And if you know anything about Darlington, the deeper into the run, the older the tires and the less the grip. For 2 years, his opponents saw Marlin as a driver to beat, but then he hit the skids. He left to drive for Felix Sabates, and they never really did quite put things together. Marlin persevered, still knowing he had more races to win. And then Chip Ganassi bought the team prior to the 2001 season, and he entered the sport with Dodge's return to the NASCAR Cup Series. That seemed to rejuvenate Marlin's career, but he first had to overcome the worst of the worst. In the 2001 Daytona 500, racing behind Dale Earnhardt on the final lap, when Earnhardt threw a block, their cars made contact. Earnhardt's car turned into the wall. The 7-time Cup champion died from his injuries.
We were told there were death threats to Sterling. And we had seen how Sterling had raced everybody up to that point in the race. And it was basically, I don't take it from anybody. I'm not giving it. I'm not taking it. Find your own way, but don't go where I want to go. And that's the way Sterling raced. And the move he made was pretty typical of the way he had raced everybody that day. I didn't see anything there that was malicious or anything there that intended to cause Earnhardt to crash. But the fact that Dale had crashed and died made Sterling the target of a whole lot of misspent anger and misdirected anger over what had happened at Daytona that day. Sterling Marlin did not deserve that, not at all.
Glover told me that Earnhardt's death and the accusations thrown at Marlin bothered Marlin more than what he would let on, that he kept those feelings inside. Marlin put the noise behind him when he strapped on the helmet. It took a heck of a lot of determination and a heck of a lot of will to get through it. Marlin helped build Ganassi's team into a potential championship contender by 2002. They had won at Michigan and Charlotte in 2001 and emerged as a team to beat.
The thing about Sterling is he always did a really good job of taking what the car would give him. He may not be the driver that would go out there and win 5, 6, 7, 8 races in a year. He'd get those 2 or 3 wins, but you knew at the end of the day, he was probably going to be in the top 5 and top 10.
2002 started with a race that would have predicted the highs and lows of that season. With Sterling Marlin racing for the Daytona 500 lead, a crash with 5 laps left caused a red flag. While still the leader and the car stopped on the track, Marlin saw he had a fender rubbing his tire. He got out of his car and yanked on it to clear it before the race resumed. Immediately, the commentators speculated he could get penalized for work under a red flag. NASCAR sent him to the rear of the field, and he finished the race 8th. His move of yanking on the fender lives in Daytona infamy. Some of the drivers in that race, already knocked out by crashes, explained to me what they saw and their reaction.
But I remember Sterling's car being so fast all day long. I could see why he'd want to jump out of the car and check on the fender, but that was a typical Sterling thing, you know, that he probably wouldn't think twice about doing it again.
I do remember seeing it on television and just laughing. I'm like, this is awesome. And this was in an era where the rules were less defined, and in most cases, you were creating a new rule and you weren't necessarily penalized at the time. So I, for a minute, much like everyone else, thought, is he gonna get away with this? And then he didn't, but I appreciate his ingenuity.
Now you kids might think that Marlin didn't know the rule. Marlin knew the rule, he just didn't have any other choice.
He also knew that that fender was in against the tire enough that he might not make it back to pit road, and so he made an informed decision to get out and clear the fender off that tire so he could get back to pit road and get it fixed and finish the race. Otherwise, he might not have at all. It was not a bonehead move or an I forgot the rule move.
The incident didn't seem to slow down Marlin. He led the point standings from the second race through the 26th race of the season.
When you look back at, you know, the Dodge entry into the sport and everything that they had going on, and you know, with Sterling's experience and everything he could do inside of the race car, and you know, getting the cars to the end of the race and doing the things that he could do to finish races would fit right in with everything they had with the speed.
This team's got a lot of determination, and we're going to race every race, try to win it, and try to win this championship. I mean, I'm 44, and it's the best team I've ever been with, and they got me some great race cars. This is one we won Vegas with, and they got a couple more like it coming up, so we're ready for them, I think.
But Marlin would never get a chance to vie for the title down the stretch. He sat fourth in the standings deep in the hunt for the title when he crashed at Kansas. He got x-rays, but even before he got the results, he was back on his tractor doing his farm work when Felix Sabates called and told him to get off that tractor, that he had a broken neck. The team tapped its future driver, Jamie McMurray, to start his career early to fill in for Marlin. McMurray already had signed to drive as a teammate to Marlin the following year. Just 2 races in, McMurray won at Charlotte in Marlin's car. A Ganassi team member handed a phone to McMurray in Victory Lane. McMurray explained something that you kids probably don't know.
And the first time that I had talked to him, well, it was on TV. It was in Victory Lane, and it was, you know, incredibly awkward because I remember trying to put myself in that moment in his shoes and how hard that must be for, you know, to watch your car win and not only win, but it was with, you know, this unknown driver and rookie. And that's, you know, we're all going to say the right things if we're put in that position, but the reality is you don't want to see your car do well.
Marlin didn't really want to talk to McMurray, but didn't hold it against the young driver. He handled the awkward moment in stride.
He was as nice of a human as I've ever met. Just super grateful and always fun to be around, tell stories. So he made that a little bit easier, but it was an awkward position to be put in.
Marlin would never again enjoy the success he found in 2002, but he still enjoyed getting to race. After he retired in 2009 and later while battling Parkinson's disease, Marlin still competed at the fairgrounds. When he came to Bristol in 2018 and got asked about his favorite memory at that track, Marlin, in true fashion, talked about the highs and lows that came all in one year.
I got burnt from 91, yeah. Come back in 91, the fall race, run second to a quickie. So that was pretty good memory, good time. But it wasn't a good time to get burnt in the spring. But I think we ran third in the points that year and come back, still finished top 10 in points. But
you could count on the obvious from Sterling Marlin, who still lives on that farm and still owns 2 Daytona 500 trophies and still remains one of only 4 drivers to win back-to-back Daytona 500s. NASCAR fans who attended Marlin's wins will never forget them. Those who watched on television likely still smile at the memory of Marlin's genuine excitement. As the sport turned more and more corporate and the Daytona 500 winners appeared more and more polished, everyone will remember Sterling Marlin as one of a kind.
Hey, race fans, thanks for watching our video. For all NASCAR on Fox News content and the best clips from Fox Sports, be sure to follow and subscribe to our channel.